let me introduce the next session. We're going to continue with the conversation about the Gaussian splatting. We're going to take a look at many examples, and we're going to take a look at it from the video side of the things. So having said that, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome to the stage the founder of RadianceFields.com, Michael Rubloff. Michael, join me on stage.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming to listen to my talk today. I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about some of the things that might be coming up in the world of Gaussian splatting. So let me, without further ado, just start going through it. So, OK, let me change the slide. There we go. OK, great. So to kind of, before I get into the talk, give a little bit of information about myself. So my name is Michael Rubloff. I run a website called RadianceFields.com that I started just at the very end of 2022. At that time, it was pre-Gaussian splatting. It was only NeRF. And what has happened since then is that the technology has rapidly spiraled out of control in terms of its capabilities. So to date, I've posted or published a little bit over 900 articles about both NeRFs and Gaussian splatting, and have also tried to service as much as I can to help the spread of lifelike 3D become everywhere. And so I also, to that same end, host a job board where people can find the latest jobs in Gaussian splatting, and have also created a daily paper tracker as well. And then I also provide consulting services and quality control for businesses that are looking to get into more of the Gaussian splatting world, and also do commission scan work too. So with this all in mind, let's talk a little bit about the world of imaging. And so I always really love this quote, which comes from Leonardo da Vinci, where he said, "The first intention of a painter is to make a flat surface display a body as if it was modeled and separated from this plane. And he who surpasses others in this skill deserves the most praise." And so we've seen there's been a lot of work to try and move towards representing the world in a 3D capacity. And post-painting, we moved to the world of modern imaging, which we would first have with, say, like black and white and film. And now we've moved to computational and digital photography, as from this example of my dog on the right. But as it turns out, we also have the way to represent the world through video, too. And we can see this example here is an actual video of a street in London. But as this turns out, this is actually not a normal video. This is actually a Gaussian splat. And we can see some of the fidelity of which we're able to achieve using Gaussian splatting. And basically, Gray Turner put this into Unity with another plugin, and so he's able to simulate walking through. So that's why it really just looks like we're looking at a normal 2D video here. But again, this is complete static 3D. And to give a quick overview about Gaussian splatting is one way to represent a radiance field, otherwise known as a very lifelike 3D representation. And it was published in late April 2023, meaning it just hit its 3-year birthday just about like a week or so ago. And then it was recognized at SIGGRAPH 2023, winning Best Paper. And since then, there's been a lot of significant advancements from pretty much every single component of Gaussian splatting, ranging from compression to rendering rates to fidelity, and tooling too has also radically increased in its capability. And I always love this this last little stat here, is that it was the 19th most cited paper of 2023. Number 17 was Google's Gemini, to give context as to how much interest there is in Gaussian splatting. And last year, there were 4.63 papers published published a day, including both weekends and holidays. So it's starting to really pick up in terms of its adoption in the research world. But we can just take a look again. The full name of Gaussian splatting is 3D Gaussian splatting for real-time radiance field rendering. It is a way to render a radiance field. And as it turns out, there's actually quite a lot of different ways to do this. We really have a strong understanding now of how to reconstruct the world around us in extraordinarily lifelike 3D. And while Gaussian splatting is a very hot topic and term, it is but one way to reconstruct the world around us. So as mentioned earlier, we also have the capability of representing the world in video form. And we can see here, this is Henry from Infinite Realities making a bunch of different faces. But as it turns out, this is actually not a 2D video either. This is actually dynamic 3D reconstruction, meaning that we can actually move around the space. It essentially is akin to 3D video. And for that, that's actually what I'm going to focus this talk on today, is one of the emerging parts of Gaussian splatting, which is not the static one, which we've seen a lot of examples of today, but more moving into the world of volumetric video, or dynamic Gaussian splatting, which is also referred to as 4D GS. And it works in a similar way to static Gaussian splatting, where we are going to pull a bunch of multi-view images. Here's a capture of me, actually, where these are all the different setups here. And from that, we're able to reconstruct it just similar to how static Gaussian splatting works as well. But now we can see, instead of being in a static moment in time, we're able to actually expand it to be a very lifelike video. And it has really grown in its capability. So this was taken back in 2024. And it's really nice that of the starting point, but the fidelity actually has continued to improve. So this was 2 weeks ago at NAB, where we can see now the fidelity is continuing to get stronger and stronger to the point where it truly just looks like we are watching 2D video. And I'm very positive that this capability is going to increase in capabilities. And so this was in a very small booth, and so you really can set this up in a small footprint too. Where you can see the box that I'm standing in is a very tiny area. But one of the things I want to actually talk about here is where this is heading. And I actually do believe that dynamic Gaussian splatting is going to really emotionally resonate with people and start to make people really request and want to experience lifelike 3D in their daily lives. And some of the ways that I think this is going to happen over the second half of this year and going into next year is going to be, we're going to see more examples from concerts are going to start to be released, I think, in dynamic Gaussian splatting. We're going to see more music videos. There's a couple examples in a couple slides from now, taking a look on the music video side. And I think that towards the back half or later part of this decade, we're going to start to see larger projects going to the scale of feature films in dynamic 3D as well. But the last one, too, I'm also really excited about is the YouTube and social media applications of dynamic Gaussian splatting, where we're going to start to see it becoming more feasible for consumers to actually represent and capture moments in time in a video capacity. You might notice as well I'm wearing the same jacket in this. And just like how we have gotten specialized hardware for static Gaussian splatting, I think that it will be very likely that we will start to see companies build cameras designed specifically for this application as well. So to talk about, would this actually come out anywhere in the real world? And the answer would be yes. It actually has made its way already into a couple of very large, big budget projects. One of the first one, it was Superman, which I mentioned in the panel earlier today. And you can see these two captures, or these two figures of Superman's parents. None of this is 2D. This is all complete dynamic 3D reconstruction using Gaussian splatting. And when I spoke to the Framestore team behind this, what they actually told me was that it gave them significantly more flexibility in their actual creative workflow, because what they decided to do was they just filmed everything up front. They just went and captured the actors, and then from there they decided how best to actually display the scene in its final form based upon everything else. And so that was one of the first early examples of dynamic Gaussian splatting. But it was, again, this was captured nearly over 2 years ago at this point, and so things have definitely continued to move forward. And the most recent example of which is actually the music video for A$AP Rocky's Helicopter, where pretty much every single person in this music video is dynamic Gaussian splatting as well. So all the things you see here of the crowds and people, all of it is dynamic 3D, and they shot it with a 56 RGB-D camera array that was then used. And so from what I understand, there's quite a lot of footage from those shoots that will continue to hopefully make their way out into the world. And it was done in Houdini and Octane as well. Another direction that I think is really interesting to see is the world of sports and dynamic 3D, where we're starting to see companies like Arcturus Sports, who started to release some of their examples, where we can create truly incredible camera angles like this one, and we're able to actually really get very close to the moment in time of which something is occurring, but now be in 3D. And we can see, we could track the ball, we can go right up into the actual location. And so this is all just like very crazy that we have the capabilities. But if you're kind of looking at this and being like, okay, maybe this is just like a demo, when are we going to see this out in the real world or on TV ourselves? It actually has already happened as well. So here is NBA on Prime from Amazon. We can see then the post-game, they're actually using Gaussian splatting now to break down some of the highlights of the game. So this is from a real NBA game. There's actually quite a few clips that they've posted at this point using Gaussian splatting, and we can start to get a better sense as to where this is actually going to be used and how it's going to be used. So in the case of sports, obviously we have it from the consumer application where we can go get closer to the action, but then we can also look at it from the team angle where they're actually able to then simulate and play back the actual game onto the floor itself in, say, augmented reality. And so there's a lot of very, very crazy use cases that have not really been fully leveraged yet. But as it turns out, there's also a few from the world of big tech where we can see actually Apple has officially confirmed that they are using Gaussian splatting to power their personas in the Vision Pro, which essentially are these very lifelike dynamic 3D avatars. This is Brad Lynch on the left here, and you can see it looks very lifelike, and they've only continued to get more and more powerful. And it would not surprise me if later this year we see Apple talk more about Gaussian splatting as well. One other note, too, is that the iPhone 17 Pros now do support genlock, and we actually have begun to see people create these camera rigs to be used with Gaussian splatting. There's a company called Radiant Images who has a rig called Meridian that is also doing this. And on the right, there's also Meta's Codec avatar program, which is also similarly able to create relightable and very lifelike 3D avatars using Gaussian splatting as well. Some other recent examples are from Netflix's Eyeline Studios, have a method called detail-enhanced Gaussian splatting, where they have a very expensive camera studio where they are able to essentially also film in a 3D and capture and be able to composite and reinsert people into a location to the point where you really can't tell they're not physically there. And finally, NVIDIA also has the Emory Lab, which open sourced is one of the only open sourced dynamic Gaussian splatting repos out there called Queen, and that is open sourced and I believe pretty permissibly licensed to use as well. But some of these other fun examples is on the YouTube side, and this is where some of the content creators are starting to move into really being able to actually create content in dynamic 3D. So this is a creator named Tim, otherwise known as MediaStorm, who is a very, very large tech influencer in China. And we can see the fidelity in this is just amazing, that you're able to move up very close to him. And yeah, we can see that the fidelity really holds up. And so I'm hopeful that we're going to see, just like how we've had creators in radio and, like, say, black and white film, I think that we're going to start to have people emerge who are native 3D content creators as well pretty shortly. A second example of this is actually Ren from Corridor Digital. So actually the last one and this one too are both being filmed and reconstructed from a company called 4DV AI. And we can see too, so Ren is actually not actually in this room, and he's been reinserted into it, but we can see there's a lot of creative flexibility that you get when you actually are filming everything in 3D, and we can see that as well. We can slow down time. We're able to represent a really a longer moment in time and then reinsert into different locations like that, and we can do it in a pretty seamless way already to this point. And so all these are splats, and again, I really would not be surprised if we start to see just fully native 3D content creators in just a little bit. So with all of this in mind, everything is moving very quickly in the world of Gaussian splatting, both on the static side and the dynamic side. And this is what I spend my entire life on, is essentially cataloging this technology and staying up to date with it. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, I post pretty much daily on the website, and I've been trying to make sure that I don't miss out on anything. So if you're interested in learning about where Gaussian splatting is headed and don't want to fall behind, I highly would recommend consider following me for this purpose. And on the same side, I have also been creating a lot of content over on YouTube to actually highlight some of the applications that were shown in here. So my goal is to really make sure that we are getting to a world where lifelike 3D imaging is natively how we interact with the world. And so hopefully I can build out that future for everyone. So if you're using Gaussian splatting or any lifelike 3D representation, please feel free to reach out to me. And otherwise, that is my talk.
Michael, thank you so much. We have some spare time for 2 questions. So the first one, actually 2 of the same kind. Guys, I can see what's on your mind. Let's put the Slido up there. So wasn't there one category missing from dynamic GS that will probably be the most popular? Wink, wink, there's another one talking about adult content, let's put it this way. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts are that anything that currently is being represented in 2D will be represented in 3D. And so I think that, yeah, and any of these use cases will apply.
We'll follow. OK. And let's take on this one. Can dynamic 3D GES be integrated into architecture or engineering projects? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think it definitely can. In terms of, there are a couple of different ways that you could try and do this, depending on how complex you want to get with it. In terms, well, there's actually a few different ways. There's one in terms of dynamic in the sense of, say, if you take multiple static 3D captures, and you start to arrange them into a flipbook and create almost a dynamic time lapse of a, say, construction site, or being able to peel back to do maintenance. That's one way that you could do it. But if you wanted to really, truly have dynamic 3D Gaussian splatting, you could take a static reconstruction of a construction site, and then take a dynamic reconstruction of, say, a person, and then have them walk through that actual location itself, too. So there are a couple of different ways, I think, you could potentially look into integrating that.
Michael, thank you so much, and also thank you for sharing all that content on a daily basis and inspiring us all. Let's give him a big round of applause. Michael Rubloff, thanks.
Thank you so much.